Get to our guy, Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska here on Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Central Federal Credit Union. What's up, Tim?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
TV, how we feeling, bud?
Hey, not too bad, not too bad. How about you? Kind of ramping up for June.
I'm trying, man. I know we got some visitors coming in. I was trying to sneak a drone over so I could take a look at every square inch of the field, man. What was the feedback on one of the few places in America where people could will critique the new turf and its paint and its layout, man? Where people move on from the new field turf or what?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. I mean, for the most part, it's. I think people like the red. I think it pops. I think it's a fresh look. My one thing with it is like personally, it's just been like I would have liked a different end zone design. Like I go with the script Huskers, go with something else because that would be unique, would be fun. I don't know. I just think the current font is a little like 80s, 90s coded. You know.
I like a little retro though.
I think a lot of people around here would love some 90s coded things happening in football.
That's fair. That's fair.
TV, we're like all in here on June. It's a huge recruiting month. Is it crazy to believe that in what a day or two we're in a ripe month? Uh, where'd the time go? Like, are
I
you
know.
are so we're saying this, but are people like are is the fan base? Do you think panicking over how the recruiting's going, giving that you blink and it is June right now?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I know there's some like kind of freaking out about where things currently stand. I mean, like again, some recent developments missing, like not making the top group for Titan Davis, really tough. Like no way to kind of go around that one. That one's just an incredibly tough development. That was arguably the top target on the board.
So
They're
what
gonna have to
happened there?
pivot.
Like before we get to the other guys, like do you know what happened with the Titan Davis thing? Because it seemed like Nebraska felt like they were in a good spot.
Yeah, that's what's weird. The kid's tough to get a read on. He's one of those guys that keeps things close to vest. From what we've been able to gather, it largely just comes down to track record of development. And again, a lot of times when you get to this month and you see guys make changes to the visit list, and it's like, oh, where'd that school come from or whatever. It means typically what it means is there is a school or two out ahead for the guy. He's just trying to do his due diligence. So, for example, with Titan, I think it's Alabama and Michigan. I think it's going to come down to those two. I think it's ultimately going to be, I think Alabama comes out on top, but I think it comes down to those two programs. Penn State's going to get, their fair shot. USC is going to get a fair shot, but I do think ultimately it comes down to those two. I think he didn't. I think with Nebraska, it's more of a I need to see it. And that's part of it. I mean, we talked so much last fall about how important winning last fall and developing some guys and like having Ty Robinson go where he went this year was awesome. But Alabama and Alabama does that every year. Michigan does that, all the time, and so it's one of those things where it really just I think comes down to development where he felt the development track record had been there. That's not to say Nebraska can't do it. I think Nebraska can get there, and I really think a strong fall from a Keona Davis or a Williams and Minari could get Nebraska back in that recruitment. That's essentially where we're at in the cycle. Nebraska's having to prep for a lot of second recruitments. I don't think they obviously wanted to be in this position because it's harder to flip a guy than it is to just outright land him. But that's where they're at, just because they have to show some stuff on the field in the fall, and they kind of have to get their ducks in a row from a recruiting board perspective because there's been some changes this spring with the new GM, with kind of figuring out where to allocate resources, how to build out the roster, and how to work against this tight roster number they're up against. Where like a school like USC, not really up against. USC is going to take 30 plus high school commits. Nebraska just cannot afford to do that.
Tim, with the kind of talking about second recruitments, do you think that's going to apply to kind of the guys that they really weren't in on or really couldn't get to where they wanted to last year if this year goes the way they want it to? Like sort of like an Williams and Winari who they missed out on the first time, came back and got him after his first year at Missouri. Like, is there a group of guys you're keeping an eye on from last year's class that would fall in the Titan Davis category that you go, hey, if Nebraska goes out and like Keona Davis has a big year or some of the wide receivers have big years or whoever that you're looking at and you go, okay, there's a chance that one could bounce back.
I think so. I think specifically along the defensive line, like it's a couple guys. It's like, oh, we'd like to, revisit that. But again, we're specifically talking second recruitments out of the portal, where it's like a guy we want, they wanted out of the high school class life cycle now with another program here. It's all about relationships. And I think the fact that Terrence Knight and Tony White aren't there limits kind of the guys they can go after. But no, there is like there's guys at the top of, hypothetically, at the top of 26 sports, Nebraska is just not really in the mix for anymore. That, yeah, they string together some wins in the fall. You get that win over Michigan. You leave September undefeated. It's like, oh, that guy's scheduled to visit in October. That guy's scheduled to visit in November. Like he's reinterested in Nebraska. That's where I think they're at. Is there's a lot of guys in this class that have mentioned they love Nebraska. They get to campus. They love the facilities. They love the coaching staff. They love all of this. They just need to see it. And they have options that have done it before. They have, schools that have like a multi-year, again, track record of development and success. Nebraska doesn't have that right now. And if they can get to that point, the rest will take care of itself.
So it's interesting because I think I'm listening. I think Nebraska knows this. I think I think they're well aware of the.
Well, and you've said it for a while.
The prove it thing.
Yeah. Like if Nebraska gets to 9 or 10 wins, like I feel like, and you could tell me, Tim, like I feel like all bets are off if Nebraska gets to, like, whether it's 9 wins, 10 wins, whatever that number is, because it seems like all of these guys kind of love Nebraska. I'm sure there's some outliers, but it seems like everything we hear about it is, oh, these guys love Nebraska. It's just they're a little early.
So, and I think, Tim, like they're recruiting that way where they know, like I've heard it. They will listen. I know you guys are waiting for us to win. You got to trust us. We win with players like you. That helps. Like there's no identity crisis or false sense of security that Nebraska doesn't understand that that's where they need to be, which I think has allowed them to kind of establish the relationships because they're making it about things other than it's kind of the what can we do for you versus what you can do for us kind of deal. And I think that's why they've been able to establish some of these relationships that may come back around for them because they're not operating under some guys that, I mean, there's some 10-win team. They understand that they've got to win.
Right, absolutely. And I think if you're someone that's like a little concerned about the recruiting class right now, I think 2 things to keep in mind. 1, this coaching staff isn't delusional about where they are, what they need to do. And 2, they're not going to just take a backup option just to get a guy in the class, just to be like, oh, we needed to address defensive line. We missed out on Ty Davis. We missed out on this guy. We're going to go find this guy, and we're going to do it. If they're bringing in a guy and they want a guy, it's because they think he can legitimately play at the Big Ten level. And so that's why, hey, okay, like they don't really have like a great, like backup board set up behind like a Titan Davis or, like a Jordan Campbell right now. Like, but that's because of who the caliber player they need to add this cycle, the caliber of player they think they can land this cycle. And again, they're not just going to compromise what they believe they need just to kind of address a need. And so and like on that first point of just like not delusional, you're right. Like the way they have approached this, I'll write something about this summer. The way they have approached this spring on the recruiting trail has been very calculated, and it's a risk that could ultimately pay off, but could ultimately, kind of blow up in their faces. The risk ultimately is they were very picky with the 26s they chose to bring in. It was guys that were mutually interested in Nebraska, regardless of the on-field results. Guys that, they feel they have a legit shot at landing, regardless of what happens in the fall. Now they're bracing for the, June, and it's like, okay, they've got a group of about 25 official visitors. And of that group, they're probably going to land, 10 to 12-ish, maybe. And so you look at the group coming in, you look at what they've done in the 26 class, you're like, oh, that's interesting. But it's like understanding they're working up against a tight number. They are essentially bracing for a lot of second recruitments with Jordan Campbell, with Nasir Rankin, with Ryan Mosley, with guys like it's like, oh, we were like, they knew, like Ryan Mosley gave a silent to Georgia back in April. They knew they've been out of that mix. They still wanted to get him on campus multiple times this spring because they know, hey, if we win some games in the fall and Dylan plays the way we think he is, you're going to want to come here. Like you're going to want to be interested in coming here. That's the way they approach 26. The way they approach 27 is we're getting as many top guys as we can, as many of the top offensive linemen, wide receivers, tight ends, defensive linemen, like defensive prospects. And it's not done. That's not done. It's going to continue through June. We want to get them affiliate or interested in Nebraska and aware of what Nebraska has to offer, get them back in for a game in the fall. And if we're winning, these guys will jump on board. These guys will carry the momentum. So all of this, like you said, like a lot of this will take care of itself it'll largely be in the 27 class, not the 26 class, because 26 they're just working up against a hard cap. But if they win some games in the fall, the 27 class is going to push for top 15, maybe even top 10.
Anything about, excuse me, Tim, before I get to the visitors specifically this weekend or in a couple weeks, anything about the schedule and the times of the kicks lend itself to kind of pique your interest or kind of say, oh, this could be an interesting weekend, or maybe not so much?
In just terms of games in the fall?
Yeah. I thought the
Yeah.
Mission 2:30 till for football is a good slot time. Not
Yes.
necessarily so for getting guys in, but a good time for a marquee game, though. I don't mind the 2:30.
Yeah, I don't either. Like the one thing I think they didn't want was an 11 or 12 because it's tough to get like national guys in that morning after playing a Friday night high school game. But 2:30, you have a little more flexibility to get guys in. Again, ideally they would have wanted 6, but 2:30 you get the opportunity to get guys in. And I mean, come that weekend, that 2:30 slate, that might be the best game in that 2:30 slate where national recruits are going to be watching that on TV. That's going to be on in the background, and that's going to be the first real like big test for Nebraska this fall. Their second real time on, I believe, second real time on national television, right? Because the first one would be Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
first real,
Houston
as like in a
Christian
premier slot.
Houston Christian is FS1 at
Yeah,
11.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So TV. So what do you think? Like, what are they going to do? What do you think happens with CJ? Nebraska was early. I mean, if not first, kind of. It's blown up since then. There could be this. Well, I mean, I don't know. I could see Nebraska saying, "Hey, man, we did the best we could." I don't know. What do you think happens with CJ?
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to does he get out of, I think it's next weekend. Does he get out of next weekend, the Florida visit, or it's this weekend? Whichever weekend, I think it's this weekend. Whichever weekend the Florida visit is, if they can get out of that weekend and he's still committed, I think that's a good sign. I think Florida State, of the 4 teams, are running in 4th. Objectively, I think Nebraska's still in 1st. Like I think you hear final decision, you hear guy that's committed is going on official visits. Again, there's a reason he stayed committed. He has had every opportunity to back off and reopen things. He stayed committed for a reason. And ultimately, I think Florida's the biggest threat. I think Penn State's like the school that, hey, they haven't gotten him on campus yet, but their DB's coach has done a really good job of making him feel wanted. He's been to his high school, he's been to a track meet, he visited him home. He's done a lot. He's made him feel wanted and kind of closed that distance, despite the obvious fact that he hasn't been up there. And meanwhile, Nebraska, like even since landing him, has continued to recruit him like he's uncommitted, like he's the top of the board cornerback target, because he is. That's exactly what he is. And so we'll see. We will see what happens this weekend. If he comes out of this weekend uncommitted, goes to Florida State, goes to Penn State, or goes to Nebraska next weekend, makes it out to these visits, I think Nebraska's in a solid spot. I think Penn State, besides Florida is the school you're worried about the most. Florida State, sure, but like I think it would take like NIL there, like real NIL resources there to get over the top there, because Florida's pushed Florida and Florida State have both been like, listen, you're closer to home here. Florida is significantly close, like no, not significantly, but Florida's much closer to home for him. And Florida also has a better outlook over the next couple of years in terms of potential program success to offer to him and a track record of development. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this weekend goes with him. But Nebraska's done everything they can to keep him in the boat. If he goes somewhere else, it's Nebraska. The only thing they can do, like you said, is just like we did our best.
Let me ask you something, TV, because sometimes I hear this a lot with recruits, and then sometimes the respective fan bases will throw this out too, and they'll say, well, it's closer to home, and generally speaking, or literally speaking, sure, but unless you're talking about driving, do recruits really discern between? And I'm not talking about going from California to Florida, right? But Nebraska's in the middle. There's flights they can get out. Is distance really a thing if you're not talking about being able to drive?
Not really. I mean, it just depends on where you're. Like, if you're battling,
like it, right? I mean, it's 2025.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't think so, but if you're battling, the difference is like it's like when Nebraska was in the Big 12 and what they used to tell recruits in Texas was like, hey, we're not, you're going to come play at Nebraska, but a couple times a year, you're going to be within driving distance of your parents. Like, you're going to be, we're going to play at Texas. We're going to play Oklahoma State. We're going to play Oklahoma. Like, you're going to be within driving distance of your family. You're going to be able to, going to see them plenty if they come to Nebraska. Like, I think that's the difference. It's not about driving distance from the school necessarily, but driving distance from the games. Like, can you make it to the games? And right now, Nebraska's had success in South Florida. Nebraska's done a good job of making those guys feel comfortable, getting those guys' families around the program and making them comfortable up here. Other parts of Florida, it's not as easy yet. It's not gotten there. And so they're trying to break this cycle, like work their way into Central Florida. I think a strong statement would be, landing one of Danny Jackson or Devin Jackson or Danny Odom and keeping CJ Brunner in the class. That would make a statement to the big three in the state of Florida that, hey, Nebraska is like a power player in Central Florida, not just South Florida. And that's the big deal for me, is just the proximity to games. Because again, he goes to Florida, they're going to play Miami, they're going to play Florida State, they're going to play Georgia, they're going to play all these schools that his parents can get to within driving distance. He comes to Nebraska. What, the closest game's like Maryland? At Maryland?
Tim, speaking of corners in this class, Darion Jones locally here has got a commitment coming up. He's got a lot of interest here as well. How are
got his 5 schools to visit too?
Yeah, how are we feeling about Durian Jones now that the visit list is out?
Yeah, it's going to ultimately, I think. I don't think you can count out Minnesota or Iowa State just yet. I think you can count out Kansas State. That's just me saying that right now. But I don't think you can count out Minnesota or Iowa State just yet. But I do think this ultimately just comes down to Nebraska and Iowa. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a toss up. But like, there's on Iowa's side, I've talked to people that think he's coming in, like he's coming to Iowa, and then on Nebraska's end, Nebraska thinks he's coming. So I think it's truly like a split right now. I think if I had to lean one way, I think just Nebraska having Donovan, having the true closer proximity, and like something of a Addison Williams has done a really good job of making those guys feel wanted. And I think it helps that this isn't a recruitment where it's like, hey, he's being recruited by new defensive backs coach Addison Williams. He's being recruited by Addison Williams, but also his older brother is experiencing what it's like to be coached by that guy every single day, and is been able to pass along like, hey, this is what it's like. And both those guys really like Addison. So I think Nebraska comes out on top, but yeah, this is a true like 50-50. Feels like a 50-50 battle between Iowa and Nebraska.
I can't imagine how difficult this would be, because the family has grown up Hawkeye fans their whole lives, and your oldest son
goes to
Nebraska, which surprised, I think, everyone. Kind of how the recruiting unfolded with Nebraska late, and then Darion has the opportunity to go to the favorite school, but his brother is at the other school. I think it's going to be fascinating. I do like the fact that you brought up Michigan, because I know for a fact, I mean, Collins is good at what he does. Danny Collins, he's good at what he does. He's a good recruiter. They put guys in the league. I mean, Parrish plays a little bit different, but he was a freshman All-America, and I get it. Deep hole safety and center field, they use him differently. Good player though. He's going to play offense for him too in Minnesota this year. So I'm kind of with you where I would probably slot him like that. And the only reason I would put Minnesota ahead of Iowa State is because I know Iowa State is not real big. Not that I would know. Not real big on trying to pull local guys away from the home state, because they haven't had success. So they don't feel real confident, in terms of how much attention it should get. So I'll be curious to see how.
Because they're dealing with more limited resources than some of these other programs.
Not as much as they just don't want to waste their time.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, I had a knockdown. I mean, it was an interesting conversation. Like, hey, we just haven't had good success with legacy guys. I'm like, just recruit him.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry, because they're good. I mean, Iowa State puts guys in the league.
Yeah, absolutely.
Minnesota puts guys in the league.
Yeah.
He's in the league. Like, it's. I kind of do like your order though.
Yeah, I kind of, again, I
Collins
respect.
he's a good recruiter.
Yeah, yeah, he is. I respect the way kind of Iowa State goes about certain things because they understand it's like, hey, we're not we don't have a shot in this recruitment. We're not going to offer for the sake of offering, but we're going to find, like the guys that other schools aren't. We're going to find the value where our schools aren't. It's like, hey, Nebraska right now is recruiting at a certain level and approaching the board like a top 25 program. There's a lot of opportunity in Nebraska right now to get those guys that previously would have been, potential Nebraska targets, PWOs, guys Nebraska would wanted to keep in state. But as Nebraska tries to make this push for a top 25 team and starts to recruit like that, it's like, oh, and facing this 105 roster limit, there's guys that, in previous cycles, maybe they would have wanted, maybe they would have, thrown an offer out there, maybe they would have been in for Barry Freeze, they may have been there already, but they're not right now. And Iowa State, it's kind of benefiting from that. And their long term play is we can develop these guys, and get them to play at the Big 10, Big 12 level, and they can be successful. And they've had success with, again, they've had Benny, they've had guys Nebraska's wanted or Nebraska's had, Ben Brommer, like they've had success with Nebraska guys. So I think you're going to see their presence increase. But yeah, I don't know how many true head to head like Nebraska Iowa State battles you're going to see, just because I think Iowa State recognizes that if Nebraska wants an in-state guy, they're probably going to get him.
Yeah. So Tim, I want to ask you this. We've been talking about sort of the quarterbacks per conference the last week or so, and I know we've talked to you a lot about kind of where we are slotting these teams and what you think, but I like your eye for evaluation, so I want to put this in front of you. If you're going with the Big Ten and the quarterback starters in the Big Ten, what order are you putting these guys in? Aller, Altmaier, Dante Moore, Julian Sayin, Dylan Raiola, and Mendoza. And let's throw Nico in there too, just for fun.
Okay. Off pure, what I think is going to happen this year, I think Aller's one. I think I'm going to put Altmaier over Altmaier 2, just because the experience, veteran guy, like, and just what it like. Again, I'm not saying for NFL, just for what college football, what it's going to look like this year.
Yep.
Aller, Altmaier, I think a push between. Hey man, I'll say this: Ohio State isn't super confident in Julian Sayin.
I know I'm with you. I'm 1,000. I think
there's
1,000% right. That's why I keep saying whoever starts at
yes. And I think both of those guys, whoever it is, whether it's him or Lincoln Kienholz, I think statistically they might be good, but if you're just from an eye test from who's the better quarterback in a game, I'm gonna put a couple guys over Ohio State's current quarterback situation, just because of the uncertainty right now. I'm saying this now just off what I've heard over the last week. It wouldn't surprise me if Lincoln Kienholz starts a game or two, at least one game or two. Like, I wouldn't surprise me if, Sayin isn't the, like, for sure the QB1, if there is some QB controversy through the year. So we've got Aller, Altmaier, and then what is it? Mendoza, Nico, Dylan, and Sayin. Is that everyone else?
And Dante Moore.
Oh, Dante. Okay, I would put Aller, Altmaier. Nico's tough for me because I'm a big Nico guy and I love the traits, and I think UCLA, come down the stretch of the season, he can really put it together. But I'll bump him down. I'll put Mendoza there in that third spot. I'll put Dylan there. I'll put Dante there, and then Dylan, and then. But I think those could be reversed. I think Dylan is the type of talent that can elevate the offense around him, while I think Dante, while good and accurate, and I'm a fan of his, I think his game is more so elevated by the talent around him. And so it really just depends on how that pass catching room comes together. I'm a big fan of Kenyon Sadiq, big fan of Evan Stewart. I think DeCorian Moore, the freshman five-star receiver they got, is going to play a lot as a freshman. I think he's not going to be Jeremiah Smith level impact, but it's going to be Ryan Williams level impact year one. He's that kind of guy. So I think from a statistical standpoint, I could see Dante outperforming Dylan only off the fact that, hey, the system around him is going to elevate him higher than.
Sadiq's a good pull.
Yeah,
Sleeping on the fact he's healthy.
right.
Good,
So
good player.
right, yeah. And then yeah, like I think you close it out with oh man, I think Ohio State over Nico right now, and that's again not a slight to Nico. It's just again we've talked so much about how good this conference is from a quarterback perspective, but yeah, I think that's how I'd put it. Is probably Nico last just because it's the newest situation. He is still raw. There's some development there. He's going to take some lumps early in the season, in my opinion. And statistically, come the end of the year, there's going to be like, oh, that interception rate isn't great. The pass completion percentage isn't great. But we're going to look and be like, oh, his November was really strong though. That's where I kind of slot Nico in. But yeah, like I think Dylan can climb to 3 potentially, maybe even 2, but of that group. But yeah, right now I think that's probably where I slot them. Mendoza's the wild card for y'all, like of that group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But
he's a big. I mean, Mendoza, Nico. I think there's a lot of wild cards in that group because, like,
I think when you say wild card, I think that I feel better about the prowess of Mendoza with Signetti than I do Nico in UCLA because I trust Signetti and what he does more at this point. That's why.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's why.
I also think it's a money year for Mendoza, and I don't think it's a money year for Nico. Like Nico, I think understands he can wait a year or two before declaring. Like Mendoza, I think wants to be QB1 this class, and he's going to be battling Drew for it. Like I've been thinking about it this week, watching some Drew Aller film because he's just been on my mind this week. He's such an interesting developmental prospect for me. Like we've seen guys in over the years where it's like through fresh DJ Lagway for one. Like every year of high school, it's like they got incrementally better, and then college, it's like year one, it kind of starts the same way, and then it gets like that. Drew's high school career was very similar in that it was like early on, it's like, oh, there's some tools there, there's some tools, and then senior year is where it really came together after some really strong flashes in his junior where he was pushing for 5-star territory, and then the senior year came and went, and he was kind of one of the top quarterbacks in the class. I think Drew has that type of year. Like I think they supported him with weapons. It's comfort in the system. Year 2, or year 2 or year 3 with Kotelnicki. Year 2,
2.
Yeah,
2. Year 2 with Kotelnicki. And again, 1 year for him. I think Drew has like a world-beating type year. Kind of stamps himself as QB1 in the Big Ten, maybe even in the country. And I just think we're staring down the inevitable Clemson-Penn State national championship this year.
So let me ask you real quick. Between the Power 2 conferences, we went through the Big Ten right now, so you don't have to order these, but this is the comparable group in the SEC. Garrett Nussmeier, Arch Manning, DJ Lagway, Lenora Sellers, and John Mateer. And if you want to go a 6th one, the next guy is probably Pavia.
Yeah.
So out of that group, for just college quarterbacks, not pro prospects.
Well, talk about proven versus unproven.
I know.
Like better.
I think right now, Big Ten, just from a depth perspective, I like every member of that Big Ten group more than I like that SEC group's really top heavy, but yeah, like Oklahoma seems really confident in Mateer, but I need to see how it translates to the SEC before I believe.
Thank you.
They're really confident in him, and they've seen it. Like I trust that staff. They've seen it. Like every single one of those guys knows what it takes. What a championship-winning quarterback looks like. What a successful quarterback looks like from their time at Clemson. I still just need to see it, and
he played at teams last year.
Right, and you look at that's just that group. Like it's like, okay, how would you compare the inexperience or like the flashes we've seen of Lenora Sellers and DJ Lagway to the flashes we've seen from like Nico and Dante and Dylan over their time starting? Like, yeah, like tools wise, you like Sellers and Lagway more. From a pure college productive standpoint, you maybe like those first 3 a little more as a collective. So yeah, I think I favor the Big Ten a little more this year just because I do think SEC is a little top heavy QB wise. And even the guys at the top end aren't unproven.
Even at the top, I still like Aller over Nussmeier.
Yeah, I do too. But from a quarterback, again, from a college perspective, I think there's still enough questions about Aller that there isn't for Nussmeier. Just in terms of being a productive college quarterback. I think right now, like Nussmeier by the end of the year, people were like, hey, you could maybe declare because he did some stuff. It's like, no, he was a good college quarterback. He can't declare, but another year could get him there. But yeah, I think they're close, but yeah.
500 yards. I get it. What is he? 63% completion percentage. He's
Nussmeier?
I
got
think so. Yeah.
good anticipation, but I don't know for whatever maybe I'll be wrong. I don't see it. I don't. Let me put it to you like this: he has no more of those traits that I love that I don't have the same things when I see Drew Aller. And Aller is the consummate but guy. I mean, the guy's statistics, he takes good care of the football, doesn't take sacks, and all everybody ever says is but. But Nussmeier gets the benefit of the doubt, and I'm like, why? I don't see it.
I think what it's going to take for people is seeing those two next to each other. Drew Aller is a tank. Drew Aller is Josh Allen, like pushing 6'6", 230 pound, like a big boy, and a guy that's going to run around, that's going to create some stuff with his legs. Nuss is like, I like Nussmeier. He's more of a, like, I think when you're talking pure like pro potential, I think the sell with Nussmeier is mentally he's so much further ahead because of who his father is. He's shown the ability.
He does anticipate. He can definitely prosper.
Yes. And he shows the ability to, like play very well within the system. Like he's the, like, how would you slot, like you slot the, like the Brock Purdy types in the NFL right now, the guys that can get the ball there, Genos, like hey, these guys are good. These guys can potentially elevate teams in situations, but what they do best is playing really well within the system, taking care of the ball, and throwing with anticipation and being able to process. Like that's the difference between those two. And ultimately we're going to see, I mean, it's going to come around and it's going to be, again, I'm just going to call my shot right now. I think it's going to be Drew QB1 come the draft next year too, just because of that. Like it's going to be a thing where guys just look at the combination of tools, they look at the production, and I think it's going to be, hey, Drew is a guy that can play within the system, is a smart player, but he's also like a guy that can elevate this offense to another level. Like we may see a team that took a quarterback this year early be right back at the top. And I don't know how you can look at the guys you currently have and then look at Drew Aller and be like, yeah, we'll stick with what we have.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Great stuff as always, Tim. Just as a heads up, we may talk to you about ACC and Big 12 quarterbacks next week if you feel like
Perfect. I'll prep myself, but sounds great.